Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Cloud Workshop video recordings, hosted by Keyline, the Digital Design College. We have been shaping design workflows in KZN for almost the last 2 decades. We offer courses in graphic and web design, video production, 3D modeling, and much more. We're located on the Florida Road Strip in Durban, so the next time you're around, give us a shout and we'll be happy to show you around and assist you with solutions to whatever you're trying to create. Today, we'll be looking at some tips and techniques in Adobe XD.
Adobe XD is a powerful tool that allows you to create user flows, wireframes, high fidelity designs, interactive prototypes, and the list goes on. When you open up XD, you'll be greeted with this home screen. And as Adobe users, I'm sure you recognize a lot of these tabs. A new feature to the Adobe XD home screen is the Learn tab, where you can access all the tutorials and user manuals, etc., etc. You can also access your cloud documents as well as cloud documents that have been shared with you. From this tab right here, you can see you have a lot of preset artboards that have already been set up. You have your phone sizes, which range from iPhone to Google Pixels, as well as iPads. Your web's standard sizes are also here, as well as some social media presets. If you don't find what you're looking for, you do have the option to add in a custom size. To start off today, we're just going to use the iPhone XR preset, and that will open in Adobe XD. Again, this might look very similar to the other programs you are familiar with, like Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign. We have our standard tool palette here on the left-hand side, as well as our layer and asset areas, which we will look at in a second. On the right here, you will notice a tab called the Properties Palette. The Properties Palette allows you to edit the individual attributes of a selected item. All right, to start off, if you want to draw a shape, you just select the tool you want and click and drag to draw a shape. To delete, select, and backspace on your keyboard. Now, bringing in assets from your computer is also very easy. In your main menu options here, you can go to File, Import. And I am just going to bring in a nice image here. As you can see, my image is very large, so I'm just going to scale this down, holding the Alt key to scale from the middle. You'll notice that it's not necessary to hold down Shift, as XD prioritizes the proportion of a shape. And we just get that into position. Okay, so we've got a nice little image in here. As you can see, any part that is not on the artboard has been cut out for your ease of reference. If we select the image, you'll notice in our property inspector, we have a couple of options here. You can resize, align, etc., etc. Also apply either a fill or border or a shadow. A very nice option here is the object blur. So if you select the object blur, you can blur out the image as much as you would like. We're just going to turn that off for now and have a look here in our layers palette. Now, if you don't see it, it's most likely collapsed. It is here in the bottom corner. So just click on the layers palette right there to pop it open. Now, one thing you may notice is that all it says here is artboards, all right? So this manages all the artboards that you have. If I duplicate this artboard here, it will populate here in my artboard list. I'll just delete this for now. So in order to access the individual elements within an artboard, just double click on the icon and it will show you everything on that artboard itself. You can also rename your artboard directly from here, or alternatively, you can double click on the name in your pasteboard and rename it. Let's have a look at drawing some shapes. So you may notice that you have very few options compared to Illustrator, Photoshop, or InDesign. That is because XD has been designed to streamline your artwork. So if you want to draw a shape, just click and drag to draw it in. And you can edit the attributes in the property inspector. We'll just remove the border and change the color to black. You can make this slightly smaller, like so. You have your ellipse tool, which works just the same. And you also have your triangle tool. Now, a new feature in XD is the fact that you can now create polygons. Before the latest updates, if you wanted to draw a star or any sort of other polygons other than a triangle, you would need to get back into Illustrator or another program. But since the updates, we now have the options to change the number of sides as well as the insets. If we reduce this down to 50, we now have a very nice little star right here, which we can place on our artboard. All right, so if we want to bring in more images, you also drag and drop feature. Bring in a little logo here from our Finder and just drop it into our work area. From here, you can resize and position normally. Text also works the same. You have the point text like this, just by clicking and releasing, and you can type in your desired text. You'll notice you have an autocorrect function that can get a little bit annoying. If it does change the text, all you can do is click here to undo it. And when you are resizing text, you'll notice again, XD prioritizes the proportion. So you can just click and drag on this little anchor to resize. Right. In your properties inspector, you can go ahead and change your font as well as edit all the rest of the text attributes. I'm going to change this to white. And I'm also going to highlight this logic here, and I'm going to change it to a lighter font, like so. All right. From here, we can select the logo as well and just align it. This is now going to make up my logo, and I'm going to put it here on my header area. And when I start resizing it, you can see that it's not actually resizing as we would expect. It's actually trying to push it into different areas. And that is because of this little option here, responsive resize. So what XD is assuming that you're doing is you are trying to fit this into a different space as opposed to just resizing it. So if we click this off and start resizing, you'll see it works better together. All right. And to group objects, it's just Command G. And then we have a very nice little logo. You'll notice that all your keyboard shortcuts work the same in XD as they will in other programs. Now, another new feature to XD is something called stacks. So I'm going to create a really quick little button here. I want to round off the corners of this rectangle. So I'm just going to click on these little circular objects here and round it off. Also going to change the color, sample that orange, and remove the border. Okay. And then I'll grab my text tool and type in something quick, like so. And we'll just position that nicely there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to group this button, and we can position it here. Now, I'm sure many of you will have come across it in the past where you've designed a button and decided, okay, I don't actually like the word menu, I want it to be something else. So you'll come in, you'll type in menu list, and you'll go and move it in and resize it, etc., etc. That can be very painful as you need to adjust all the elements. Now, XD has introduced something called stacks, right? Now, the biggest thing to remember with stacks is that it only affects a group of objects. So as I said earlier, I have grouped these two elements, and in my properties inspector, I'm going to enable the stack option. Now, as you'll notice here, you have two options, either a vertical stack or a horizontal stack. XD will automatically apply one of the two, depending on the flow of your artwork. So it has analyzed this object and it has gathered that the artwork flows mainly horizontally, which is why it has applied this one here. It has also picked up the padding of the object, so the area between the text and the background object. So this is what makes it so fantastic. When I have stacking enabled and I come into my object and I adjust my text, it now automatically adjusts everything around it. No more having to go resize the background to fit with the content. It is all there immediately. Another section to have a look at here in XD is the assets panel. So we had a look at the layers, which you can see here. They are now all grouped here. You can go and rename this to menu button. But the asset panel works a little bit differently. This stores all your colors, character styles, and components. We'll look at components a little bit later. If you want to use colors for later use, you can simply select your object and click on this add button here, and it will add all the colors that you have selected. Similarly with character styles, just to add a character style, click the button here, and it will add in all the character attributes. Now, a component works similarly to how symbols work in Illustrator. To create a component, simply select the object, and you can right-click and say Make Component, and note the keyboard shortcut is Command-K. Or with the object selected in your Assets panel, just click on the Add button. And from here, you can rename it as well. Now we can go and add in variations of this logo, or instances of it, rather. And all we need to do is make a change to one of them to see it applied across the board. Here we go. So components are essentially like symbols in Illustrator. To remove an asset from the asset panel, simply right-click on it and say delete. You can also filter your assets here at the top, either by colors, character styles, or components. If assets have been sent to you through the Creative Cloud options, you can find them right here, either under the Shared With You tab or the Cloud Documents. And you access this window through this little plus icon right here. All right, I'm going to open up another file quickly. You'll notice here you have two options. The Open option will open it from your Cloud Documents that you have saved. And you have the Open from your computer, which are documents that have been saved locally. So you'll notice in this document, my asset list is a lot longer. All the assets have been added in, the colors, the character styles, components, etc., etc. One thing you will notice here is that I am missing a font. It's very simple to resolve. Simply right-click on the missing font and say Replace Font. If you have a Creative Cloud subscription, which most of you do, and the font is available on Adobe Fonts, this will automatically be activated for you. If not, you will have to come in and manually choose a different font. I'm just going to change that there. And here. And that resolves that issue. Right, let's talk a little bit more about these components here. So I have a button here that says Sign Up. So I'm firstly going to turn this into a component by hitting Command-K. Now for you web designers, I'm sure you know that you can add hover states to different sorts of buttons. As this is a prototype program, XD has allowed us to add a hover appearance to it. So once a component has been made, you'll notice here in the Properties Inspector a state called Default. Now we can add a different state by just clicking on this Add State button. And from here we can choose Hover State. So with the hover state selected here in your properties panel, you can now go and change these attributes. So I double click into this group, and I select the background. I can change this to a green color. And now you can cycle between the two different states. In order to preview this document in real time, just hit the little play button up here. And now when I hover over my button, it simulates a hover state. Another cool thing about components is the fact that you can replace them. So I'm going to double click into this group here, and I'm going to turn this little component, this little object into a component. Again, the keyboard shortcut is Command K. You'll notice that it's now got a green border around it, identifying it as a component. Now I'm just going to look here, and I'm going to turn this one here into a component as well as this locked one. You'll notice they all appear here in my component section of my asset panel. Now, if you want to replace a component, simply click and drag the new component item over it, and it replaces it. And that's an easy way to replace items, or replace components. Let's have a look at some repeating elements. Now, we have a menu item here. We'll need to populate several of them, as this is an app for different trails that you can go and hike on. Now, what we would normally do is we would populate one, and then using the copy function with Alt, duplicate them down. That's a little bit tedious. So XD has given us a very nice function called the repeat grid. So make sure that all the objects that you want to repeat have been grouped, and then simply hit this button here in the Property Inspector. Now you'll notice these little handles around your group. Now this allows us to either make copies along the horizontal axis or along the vertical axis. You'll notice that as I'm duplicating it down, they get grayed out, and when I click off of them, they disappear. That has to do with the size of my artboard. So in order to resize an artboard, simply click on it and drag these handles down. You'll notice this little dotted line right here, this little dashed line. This is basically the end of your screen and when it will start to scroll when you create a preview. All right, so while this is a repeat grid group, there's a couple more things we can do. For instance, adding in multiple images. So we need to add 3 images to this group, and they each need to be a different image. So what we could do is ungroup them and go and add these images in one at a time. But again, we're trying to streamline our workflow here. So all we need to do is navigate to wherever we have saved our images and select all of the ones we want. I'm now going to drag this onto just the first object. You can see it highlighted there, and release. Now it will take each instance and place it in the repeated elements. You can do the same thing with text. As long as you have a text document with this extension, .txt, and you have a return function, which means when you typed in your text, you hit the return key to go to the next line, this will work. As we did with the images, simply click and drag onto the text you want to replace and release. Now you'll see they have all been replaced in chronological order. Let's do that one more time with the trail names. And you can see that repeat as well. One more thing to note with stacking. So I'm going to ungroup this grid, and with all of these objects selected, I'm going to group them one more time because stacks only affect groups of objects. I'm going to click on this stack object right there. I'm now going to double click into this group, and I want to move this Pine Meadow Lake loop into the spot, into the place of the Shane Monk Sweet Clover Trail. Now, normally what you would have to do is move this one out of the way, then move the Pine Meadow up, and then move this one back down. But with stacking, that is a thing of the past. All I'm going to do now is move this one up, and it replaces the top one and moves it into the previous place. You can also adjust the padding, either between a set of objects like this, or by holding Shift S, you can adjust all the padding, like so. So again, to adjust the padding, just double click into the group and click and drag to adjust it. Now you'll notice here on the top, we have 3 different types of work modes. Design, which we've been working in the last couple of minutes, and prototype. Now, prototype allows us to simulate interactivity in our prototype. The first thing to notice is you must set a home screen. So basically the first of your artboards that will appear. This will be the first artboard that you see, and it'll allow you to navigate your way through the prototype. So select the artboard you want to set as your home artboard, and you'll notice there's a little grayed out house here. Simply click on it to set the home artboard. If you unclick it and you want to check another one, just select the artboard and click the home screen. So once that's done, you'll notice that each item that you click on has this little wire attached to it. This allows you to add interactivity to specific objects on your artboard. So let's add some interactivity to this button. I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to click and drag this and connect it to this sign up artboard. You'll see this line connecting it now. So when I preview this, and I now click on this button, it moves over to the sign up artboard. In your property inspector, you'll notice you have a couple more options. You can choose the type of action that occurs, and you can choose the destination. You can also choose the type of animation. So if I change this to slide left and we do a test, that animation changes. Your triggers determine what triggers the action, either by dragging, keypad and gamepad, or voice. Tapping and clicking are synonymous. It's the same thing. And your actions, you have a couple of different ones. You've got auto animate, you've got overlay, scroll to, but the most common ones used here is previous artboard and transition. Previous artboard is a great way to simulate the back button, as you can see here. Now when we play this, we have a way to get back to our previous artboard. Let's link up this button here to our Explore artboard. And let's have a look at because this one's quite a long one. So let's have a look and see what our preview does when we test that out. Sign up, continue, and now you can see we can scroll down and see the entirety of that artboard. One thing you will notice is the fact that this little navigation bar is not moving as we're scrolling. Now, in order to fix that, if we go back into design mode and we click on this little component, you'll see an option here that says fix position when scrolling. That basically turns it into a sticky object. Now, when we do a preview and we scroll, it stays exactly where it's supposed to stay. Now, exporting is a big part of XD. Obviously, when you are creating prototypes and you're showing this to clients, you're also going to eventually send this to developers to actually code and create. XD makes it very easy to export specific objects. Simply select the object you want to export and click here, Mark for Export. We can do a whole bunch of these and export them all at once. I go in File, Export, and you'll see we have different options here. You can either export a batch, which basically goes through all the items marked for export and will export them all together. Here you can set the different type, whether it's for web, iOS, or Android, and these work the same as the Illustrator export options that we looked at earlier in the day. You can also export selected items, for instance, an entire artboard. Again, you have the design, web, and iOS and Android options, as well as exporting all your artboards. The last work mode that we have here is the share option. So we can click on the share work mode, and here we can choose how we want to share this. We can either share it as a design for review, development, presentation, user testing, or custom. So if we click design for review here, and we can give the link access to only invited people, anyone with a password, or anyone with a link. From there, you can say create link, and this will upload our documents for us. From here, we can follow the link and it will open in the browser. And you can send that link to whoever needs to preview this file. You can add a comment, submit it, etc., etc. Now, what is very nice here is if you decide you want to change the type of viewing options, whether changing it to development or presentation, you don't need to go and create a new link. All you need to do is update it, and it will update the document that has been uploaded. Refresh here. You'll notice that we have some more options now. With the development share option, you can see you even get the CSS options and code right here. One last new function in XD is the invite to co-edit. Now this is still in its beta testing, so there might be a few glitches, but you can invite your colleagues to edit this document with you simply by saving this as a cloud document. And then clicking the invite to edit button up here. Simply type in the email address of the person you want to send it to and invite. And the invitation will be sent, and your collaborator can then access that file.